It was the quiet after the storm, the first day after the first night with no Iraqi missiles, and Tel Avivians took to the streets.
Well, it's unpleasant to be cooped up in the house all day long, but we hope it'll be over soon.
I'm sick of being at home and listening to the news, so I went out.
But like most here, wherever she went, her gas mask went with her. That was the order of the day. Tel Avivians call it the city that never stops. That was true in the supermarkets, where they replenished supplies of perishables depleted during the 2-day stay at home.
I don't know if it's panic. People want to save, to have things at home because they don't know what will happen tomorrow.
Traffic was unrecognizably light on what is normally the first day of the work week. Still, many gathered where the missiles had struck, observing the wreckage and perhaps pondering their own good fortune. But many others stayed at home, comfortably close to gas-proof rooms, prepared for the event of chemical warfare.
It is a battle of nerves. I mean, you keep waiting for something to happen, and not knowing when it's going to happen is really the hardest part.
Many Israelis hope that might change with the arrival of U.S. Patriot missiles, airlifted in Saturday with their American crews. The Patriots were effective in shooting down Scud missiles in Saudi Arabia. But they arrived too late to stop the Scud that plunged into the Pasker family's home outside Tel Aviv, landing just inches from 2 sleeping children.
We realized that it was really a miracle because this is the only spot in the room that the beds are not here.
The problem is, not everybody here believes in miracles. Many wondered how to deal with the uncertainty still ahead. One newspaper suggested exercise, another sex. Tel Avivian Rafi Jouari suggested understanding Saddam Hussein.
I was very astonished because how this person can achieve to the top of to be the leader of Iraq. It is not possible.
Jouari calls Saddam Hussein stupid. In his native Baghdad, he and the Iraqi president were schoolmates.
He was a violent student. He didn't like somebody else to debate with him. He wanted only his word.
But other Tel Avivians say they've seen worse, like Avram Turnau, who survived the Holocaust.
There's another Hitler in a smaller size.
Most here expect more missiles in the days ahead.
I'm scared of the thought that maybe the rocket will hit my house and I will be in heaven.
Others take it in stride.
We are Israelis, we know what it is. It's not the first war.
Some Tel Avivians moved out of town for the duration, but the vast majority seem ready to weather the storm right here, in their home by the Mediterranean Sea.
Hi, this is Leon Charney for the Leon Charney Report. We've just seen a film on the desolate state of affairs in the state of Israel, how every ordinary citizen is trying to live through this desperate time, which is, why do I call it desperate? Because after 6 o'clock, there's no life in Israel today. How long will this last? We have a terrific panel with us today. We have 2 Congress people, and we have Lally Weymouth back, the distinguished journalist from the Washington Post. On my left is Nita Lowey, Congresswoman from Westchester County. Eliot Engel just flew in from Washington, from the Bronx and Yonkers, is that correct? Yes. And our distinguished Lally Weymouth from the Washington Post, or of the Washington Post, from the Washington, it doesn't matter. Well, let me start with you, Lally. There was a report in the Washington Post by Bob Woodward, that some of the facts that we're getting about the war from the military are not exactly true. Do you know much about that?
Well, Bob is doing a book on the Pentagon, and I think that he has unusually good sources as a result of this, and he's an excellent reporter also. And so I think his story should be taken seriously, and no one has really said, has answered the story, whether it's true or not.
Do you know what the story is, Nita?
Well, I understand that there is just 65% success.
He just said
in
that
the sorties. I believe that's
basically that they weren't taking out as many targets and they were having less success than the public. I mean, they weren't having no success. I mean, they were having sort of, I think he said about 65% success as opposed to 100% success. Less than is being portrayed by the administration was the gist of Bob's story.
Well, essentially, that's the feeling I'm getting from the briefings. And you see the change in mood and the change in the statistics. At the very beginning, we had the feeling that it was successful. We were going out there and knocking out all the chemical plants and the bacteriological plants. I think now there's certainly an effort on the part of the administration and the Pentagon to quiet the sense of euphoria and to be more realistic. The latest I hear is that we have destroyed about 50% of the chemical plants, that the aircraft are way down in those bunkers, and although we are bombing them, it's very difficult. You have to do it one by one. So that we're not getting, as far as I'm concerned, accurate reports on BDAs, and I don't think bomb damage assessments, and I'm not sure that they really want to give you all that information.
Eliot?
Well, I think the President, in fairness, did say at the very first day not to have a false euphoria, that this is not something that would take a day or two or even a week or two. And I think we're just seeing that. War is never easy, and it takes a long time. There will be days that will be up and days that will be down, but I have no doubt that the outcome will be as we would like to see it. I have no doubt that will prevail. Apparently, all the nuclear plants are destroyed, nearly 100%, if not 100%, and I think that's very positive. I said, and I voted to support the President, I said that getting Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, to me, wasn't the end-all and the be-all. To me, the more important thing was to get rid
to disarm him
of the nuclear plants and the biological and chemical warfare, because that, to me, posed the greatest threat to the region and to the world, long range, than simply his occupation of Kuwait.
I agree with the Congressman. I had the feeling from talking to officials yesterday in Washington that things were going along relatively well, perhaps not as perfectly as one would have hoped in the first 24 hours, but relatively well. But I thought that the worrying thing and the other thing that bothered people in Washington yesterday was the statement released by Baker on Monday night from the State Department between Baker and the Soviet Foreign Minister Bushmertnik.
With the linkage problem?
In which they said that the Soviets and Americans appeared to indicate that a withdrawal by Saddam from Kuwait would be adequate. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about that, because I would agree with you that withdrawal from Kuwait shouldn't be the end goal of this
operation. That statement, by the way, Lally, shook up the whole Israeli government. Everybody was asleep, and on Nightline, I think Ted Koppel caught Bibi Netanyahu, the deputy foreign minister, and he was like half awake. He said, well, I haven't seen the whole context of the statement, but it does imply linkage.
Well, you know, I serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Secretary Baker has come there many, many times, and I never get a very good feeling about him with regard to his position vis-a-vis the Middle East, particularly Israel. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he believes, or he marched with Bushmertnik, and together they're going to say, okay, we'll have some kind of linkage at the end of the war. The Congress has spoken loudly and clearly. There ought to be no linkage. President Bush himself has said that to have any kind of linkage would reward Saddam Hussein for his aggression. And I think it's a hypocrisy. I think it's disgraceful. And I think it's a real kick in the head to Israel, particularly when the United States has asked them to show restraint, and they've showed restraint beyond what any other nation on this earth would show. This is no way to repay them, and it's particularly galling, I think.
By having a Soviet-U.S. peace
Didn't he disavow it? I mean, the State Department, did they try to disavow it?
Well, they tried to disavow it, but that's the game they play. If you remember, several months ago, President Bush spoke at the United Nations and made a statement which could be interpreted, if you really want to read between the lines, that there could be some kind of linkage. Definitely. And there was a big uproar, and Bush disavowed it. I think we continuously see that kind of thing coming from the administration, and it's, again, very disheartening. I think the conduct of the administration so far in the war effort has been good, but I just get a very annoying and unnerving feeling that they're going to go back to the same old nonsense, which is Secretary Baker coming before the Foreign Affairs Committee and saying, here's our number, Israel, if you want peace, call us. It's that kind of arrogant attitude that really troubles me.
Well, there are rumors in Israel that one of the reasons the Patriot missiles were not installed in October was because Bush was very angry at Shamir, and it was a personal thing, and they didn't really want to give him all the armaments that they were supposed to have. up till today, the United States and Israel do not share codes, and if Israel want to retaliate tomorrow, they need certain coding information in order to bomb, so they don't bomb American planes. They still don't have that coding information. Now, the question to you, Nita, we'll start with you. What should Israel do?
Well, let me first address your comment about the Patriot missiles. I remember one of our first briefings, and we asked about the Patriot missiles. And first the information was, well, they'll be there at the end of the month. And some of us got absolutely enraged. They'll be there at the end of the month? You've been preparing for war since August. And you know that Israel has been threatened. You know that the Iraqis have said right at the start that Israel will be the first target. The next day, it was announced that the Patriot missiles were going to be delivered to Israel with Americans helping to operate them and train the Israelis, and you know those numbers have been increased. And you say, what should Israel do? Number one, I think Israel has every right to defend itself. However, I certainly support Israel's restraint in bowing to the wishes of this administration and acting as carefully as they can, not to get themselves more involved in the war. But the feeling that the people of Israel must have, and I certainly was there, and I think of my friends who were there, just waiting for those Scud missiles to drop
Our
is
whole
terrifying.
family's there, Nita.
Terrifying, Leon. Now, the question I have, however, the aura around Israel has always been the fact that they have a strong deterrent.
Right.
Now, once you use that deterrent in a limited way, it no longer is that powerful deterrent. So my question is, and I've asked this question many times, what could Israel do that the United States couldn't do now? Now, there is the ultimate. We don't want to think about that.
Sharon
But
said,
that is the question.
Lally, you have visited Olympia Restaurant on a Thursday and Friday. Olympia Restaurant, for both of you, is something like
gossip center.
Elaine's, okay? It's the gossip center where all the generals and the ex-generals get together. It's right near the Kiryat, which is sort of the Pentagon.
You were there Friday.
Well, we always,
I haven't been there since
there's a
October.
meeting every Friday, and Thursday is a big day. The Robins go on Thursday, and Friday the Sharons go. It's the in place. Somebody wrote a column, I think, for the New York Post yesterday, describing the atmosphere at the Olympia on a Friday afternoon. That really gives you a buzz about what's happening. And Sharon, or one of his comrades, said, give me 1,000 boys in a night raid and I'll take out all the Scuds. Now, you may look at Sharon and say he's crazy, but I was with Sharon in 1973 when he crossed the Suez. I thought it was insane at that time, but I was working at the U.S. Senate trying to film and see how much Russian armaments were going in. And he got through. He did it. He got the bridge over. I mean, there were a lot of casualties, but he did it. My theory has been for the last 2 weeks that it was a very good political decision by Shamir to hold or to do restraint, but I think he'll fall on the decision because I don't believe the civilian population can take it. They've broken this feeling of invincibility, which is the bedrock, basically, of the Israeli population. So that's what makes me nervous. I'm not critical of Shamir. I'm just saying I'm not sure that it'll run with the population.
But the question, Leon, if they should respond in a limited way, doesn't that break this feeling of invincibility? It's the deterrent that keeps this aura of invincibility around them.
Look, they had the possibility to preempt and to take out the Scud. They knew where the Scud fields were. It wasn't a mystery.
Well, I don't even call it a preemption. When Tarek Aziz sits with James Baker in Geneva and says, I want to destroy Israel, that's a declaration of war. So that's not even preemption.
Right, but they had the possibility. They had the option of deterrence. And in meeting number 3 between Bush and Shamir, which, if you remember, took place in December, Shamir apparently promised President Bush that he would not preempt. And so they lost the option of preemption when Shamir gave it up at the White House in December. Now, I think you can argue this both ways. Shamir was in a very tough position with the administration. He had had 2 meetings with President Bush that had been an unmitigated disaster. I wrote a story about it in the Washington Post. I'm quite familiar with the details. And I think from the Israeli side, they had been a disaster. And relations were at an all-time low between the U.S. and Israel. You could argue that starting from where he started from, the Prime Minister acted in the best interests of Israel. He has a huge Soviet influx of Soviet Jews. He has to provide for them. He's trying to think about the nation. it's very tough. I agree with you, Leon, that
The
now, and I
political
agree
decision probably was a good one, but I don't think it'll run with the civilian population. We've got a hold for commercial. Elliot will come back with you. We'll be back in 1 minute after commercial break. This is an informed and delightful panel with a sad subject. We're back. I'm Leon Charney with this very formidable panel. I have Congresswoman Nita Lowey on my left. I have Eliot Engel in the middle of two pretty women, Congressman from Yonkers in the Bronx, and I have Lally Weymouth, a distinguished journalist from the Washington Post. We're talking to you on a Thursday night, and we're being televised to you on a Sunday, so obviously some comments can change. If CNN can change every 3 minutes, we can change every 2 hours. In any case, what we're trying to do is give you some in-depth ideas of what's happening inside Washington tonight. We have really three illustrious people who can tell us what's the scuttlebutt. Eliot, you were...
I wanted to say that I'm less pessimistic in terms of the overall Israel-United States relationship and in terms of Israel losing its so-called aura of invincibility. I think in a perverse sort of way, Saddam Hussein has brought Israel and the United States closer together, certainly the closest they've been since this administration has taken over. And I think to a large degree that he set a bunch of things in motion that I don't think can be turned back. I think the world has seen what Israel has done, the restraint. The Western capitals are all abuzz with pride and good feeling toward Israel. And I think that that is going to help Israel in the long run. Everyone knows that these are extenuating circumstances. This is a war going on, and that's the only reason why Israel is not retaliating. And you know, sometimes strength, you can judge strength in a number of ways. You can not only judge strength by retaliation each and every time. Sometimes gentleness is strength also, and I think that's what Israel is showing right now.
But I don't think it's the point, Eliot. I agree with you. The relationship between the United States and Israel obviously is going to be improved. That's the reason that Shamir made this decision. What I'm saying to you is the vox populi, the feeling of the people, whether they can buy that, whether Shamir can sell that. You know, what Lally said is really very important. What Shamir agreed to do in order to improve relationships, get money, and settle Russian immigrants was to take the first hit. Now, God forbid if that first hit were a chemical warhead or it had a chemical, who knows what it could be.
Well,
and this
Leon,
is
the polls that I've seen,
polls are 90% for Shamir tonight.
Right now,
I agree,
for what he's done.
They're
But
very,
still,
wait till the investigations come out.
But the one problem is, I think that it's one thing looking at it from America. It looks great, and everybody admires the restraint from here. That's wonderful, and you're right about Europe too. However, in the Middle East, I think it's a jungle basically. And you hit me, I hit you, and I'm not sure that say the Arab countries will be so admiring of Israeli restraint.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say.
I think they'll view it as weakness.
However, it doesn't so much depend upon how this ends up. If the Allies have a swift and decisive victory, and if Israel, and please God, let's hope, Israel doesn't have to take additional damage, don't you think that Shamir would come out of this at a much higher level than if, God forbid, there is additional damage in Israel?
Well, that's true.
We don't know. The story hasn't been written
Nita,
right
what
now.
is important is what kind of government does come to Israel after, because you're going to have to change. Something is going to have to happen. The configuration of the Middle East is changing. It's changing radically. Saudi Arabia now maybe a friend, Bahrain, Qatar, Dubai, all the Emirates. Things are changing there. And there is a Palestinian problem. It is not going to be resolved if we bring them out of Kuwait, if we take care of Saddam Hussein. There still will be a Palestinian problem. How that's resolved, I can't tell you today.
You know, though, the PLO has so discredited themselves.
I don't mean PLO today. Okay. I mean Palestinian problem.
Inside Israel.
I was going to talk about Sara Nusseibeh. Did you ever meet him?
Yes.
He's been arrested. Sara Nusseibeh is a very big Palestinian leader who lives in East Jerusalem, a philosopher. He was arrested yesterday and detained for 6 months without trial. You have left-wingers in Israel who are crying that he should get a trial, and you have Tzachi Hanegbi and Eliakim, the real right-wing congressmen in Israel, who say they should expel him. And this is going to be a big problem. I was with a Jordanian minister last night who basically wants to see peace in the Middle East. And he said, Leon, why are they doing that? I don't have an answer. We, I think, have to look forward, Eliot, to, you know, after the war is over, and I'm sure the war will be over, hopefully, quickly, what are we going to do with that problem? That's something everybody has to get into.
Well, let me just say this. There are a lot of problems that are going to have to happen after the war, and as we well know, the president has spoken to Shamir more in the last couple of weeks than he'd spoken to him in the last couple of years.
Because it's in his interest.
Of course. And I think the job of Congress after this is over, and let's hope it's soon, is to work with the administration and stand firm in dealing with the issue of the million-plus Soviet Jews that are expected, the Ethiopian Jews, to make sure they get the loan guarantees. That's being held up. We signed a letter just this week to urge the administration to speed the $400,000 in loan guarantees that's being held up.
And you know, one of the interesting things there is we met with the Israeli ambassador just last week, Shoval, and he said that the press reports that Israel is asking for $13 billion is totally erroneous.
He told me that
they've not asked for it. Again, it's the State Department or whoever is leaking it. It's
but hasn't Modi been in
nonsense.
town? The finance minister, isn't he in town in Washington now?
Yes.
Yes.
And isn't he looking for aid?
Well, they're always looking for aid, but I think the way it came out in the paper that they were asking $13 billion, it almost made it seem as if it was tit for tat.
Quid pro quo with Egypt?
Right. And
I heard that from U.S. sources, too, that the Israelis did not ask anything at the meeting when they agreed not to preempt, which is almost...
It would be correct. Well, I think it looked terrible politically if Shamir sold the population of Israel for $13 billion loan.
Right.
That wouldn't look too good.
Well, it seems to me that there are two problems. Number one is, how does the war end? Does the war end with Saddam Hussein still in power, which is not a good end from the point of view of the Middle East and from the point of view of Israel and from the point of view of the United States, if you ask me. If we fought and all these American soldiers die and this guy is still in office and can still go on...
It's a loss, in my opinion.
I don't think that ought to happen. I agree with you. It would be a loss, and I think anyone who would think that he could remain in power after a war and not spend 3 or 4 years rebuilding himself. You have, shamefully, a lot of companies all over the world, even American companies, that are willing to sell him the latest technology.
Do you know, by the way, Eliot, I heard a report tonight, it's Thursday night, that there are a bunch of American companies lined up in Washington selling or trying to sell Kuwait when it's to be rebuilt, all kinds of equipment. And I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just showing you how war is business.
You know, not only is it business, but you remind me of one thing. The day after the invasion of Kuwait, we were briefed. Again, the Foreign Affairs Committee was briefed, and we had one of the Undersecretary, Jack Kelly, for Mideast Affairs. And the question I said to him was, many of us have been saying that there ought not to be arms sales to all these countries in the Middle East, to all the Arab countries in the Middle East, just whatever the price can pay. We sold Kuwait some of our most sophisticated weapons, and they weren't even capable of using them to defend themselves. So what does that tell you about United States policy in terms of selling weapons to countries that can't even utilize them?
Well, that's one of the problems with the war, don't you think, that we, as you say, Kelly was testifying in favor of not imposing sanctions on Iraq until 2 days before Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And so you have the administration doing a 180-degree reversal, whereas Congress really for the last 2 years, Senator Helms, D'Amato, and Pell had been fighting to impose sanctions on Iraq unsuccessfully.
We were screaming. We could not understand why Iraq was taken off that list. Syria, our supposed ally, is on the list, and Iraq was taken off. I mean,
such allies you have to run.
That's right. Or not turn your head at least.
Let's get to a new topic which disturbs me. 80 planes landing in Iran. What's going on?
Well, we've heard many reports, and,
let's hear about it.
I'm not sure that our information is so classified because you hear the same thing on CNN. And in fact, General Schwarzkopf last night said either they are going there to defect, which he didn't think was the case, either they're going there to remain ready in case that Israel gets involved and Iran decides to switch allegiances, or the third scenario, which should I say, that they're going to defect, that they're going there, or that they could come right back in and attack at the time that they are needed. Let's face it, staying in the bunkers is sure death. We're attacking bunker by bunker through our bombs. So that as to why they're going up there, we really don't know. And even General Schwarzkopf or any of our private meetings have not made that very clear.
It's clear to me that there's a side deal between Iran and Iraq. I mean, that's clear. The magnitude, it's not just a few planes straying away. They're all flying from the same area, 10% of the Air Force. There's a side deal there. We are not quite sure what the side deal is, but we ought to make no mistake about it that there is a side deal.
But doesn't it look like Saddam's Air Force trying to preserve itself for after
That was
the war?
the third that I didn't mention, right.
Sure.
That was the third.
Isn't that what the most likely scenario?
What do you hear, Lally, about Iran?
Well, that's what I hear. Is it Saddam's Air Force trying to preserve its resources for after the war?
There was a report on tonight that Iran now is trying to be the mediator to bring peace together. They had some French deputy minister over there and somebody else, and Iran was now going to mediate this problem. If Iran did join the war against Israel, what kind of scenario does that bring?
Well, obviously it would widen the war, and anything that widens the war is not something that we'd like to see. But I do think that there will be lots of diplomacy going on, and Iran will be prevailed upon not to enter the war. I cannot see how Iran would think ultimately that it's in their best interest to enter the war. After all, they fought an 8-year war with Iraq. They know Saddam Hussein. They know what he's up to. And can it help them to keep Saddam Hussein in power? If Saddam Hussein is defeated and there's a power vacuum, ultimately, I think Iran can be the beneficiary. So I think the planners in Tehran know that, and they're not going to do anything to really prop him up.
What scares me, Eliot, before you were born, in the young days when I worked with Jimmy Carter, I worked on a hostage crisis for him. And I flew to some capitals and did some behind-the-scenes work for him. And we thought we had worked out possibly a deal with the Iranians and Rafsanjani and the Ayatollah Khomeini. But as soon as you had a deal, there was a different deal on the table. I mean, it was like a bazaar, which is basically what the Middle East is. What scares me is that when Iran and Iraq come together and they say, well, what do we have that brings us together? They look at Israel and they say, well, this is the thing we have together. Let's try and smash the Jewish state. That's what really worries me.
We knew from the very start that this coalition was very tenuous, that it was really more of a tactical alliance. And I think the President and the Secretary of State are very aware of the fact that they have to keep everything in balance. Assad has been very quiet lately. But as we all know, he would love to be the great Salah ad-Din, the great ruler of that part of the world too. So it's in his interest to get rid of Saddam Hussein.
President Carter once told me the brightest Middle East leader is Assad, and he's probably waiting in the sidelines.
Precisely.
What is General Sharon doing in the sidelines, Lally?
Well, I think General Sharon has been very clever. He's been very silent. And I believe, I have heard, not from him, but I've heard from other sources, that Aric Sharon has long warned against the Iraqi threat, that he's long wanted to do something about it. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how he plays it against Shamir politically, and whether he comes to power, or I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
You know, it's galling that so many of statesmen are now aware of the threat of Saddam Hussein. When the president misspoke earlier last year and said that he was opposed to settlements in the West Bank and the native the words, including East Jerusalem, I sponsored a resolution which passed 10-1 in the House, and Senator Moynihan sponsored it in the Senate, saying that Jerusalem is and always will be the undivided capital of Israel. Senator Dole attacked it, you remember.
Right. What happened with Dole, by the way? Why did he become so...
I don't know, but the interesting thing with that is that he said he traveled to Arab capitals, and all they wanted to talk about was this resolution that he thought was so terrible. And one of the capitals he traveled to was Baghdad, and one of the people he spoke with was Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
So it's just incredible to me how many of us saw this coming, and so many people just had turned a blind head to it.
You know Dole, Lally?
I've met him, but I read the transcript of his meeting with Saddam Hussein, and it was most amazing.
Nita, do you know him?
No, I've met him many times, and remember how shocked we were before that when he spoke out against the $3 billion in aid for Israel, and he said it was like a drug addict.
We're back. I'm Leon Charney. This is the Leon Charney Report. We're talking to two very able Congress people, Nita Lowey of Westchester and Eliot Engel, Bronx Yonkers, highly intelligent people. It's not to say all Congress people are not intelligent, but I've seen a few who weren't. We've lost Lally Weymouth. She had to go visit Saddam Hussein in his bunker, but she'll give us a report next week and find out where he went. Eliot, how was the State of the Union address by Bush? What did you think?
I thought it was good. I was
Were you chilled?
Pleased. Well, I wasn't chilled. I mean, Bush is not exactly Winston Churchill when he speaks, but I think the content was good. He opened it with the Gulf, he closed it with the Gulf, and in the middle he mentioned a number of domestic issues, which I think were important as well, because the 102nd Congress will have to come to grips with these issues. So I thought all in all it was a pretty good speech. I didn't agree with everything he said domestically, but I agreed with everything he said vis-a-vis the war. I think that we needed to have this kind of morale booster. I think it was wonderful that Congress gave a standing ovation for over a minute to our men and women in Saudi Arabia. And from all reports, they saw it and they were buoyed by it as well. And I think it was important. It came at a good time.
Nita, how did you feel?
Well, I shared his resolve to end this aggression, and I was pleased to see that in spite of the debate, in spite of the differences, Congress was united in support of the president, and I think we all pray for a speedy and quick and decisive victory. In addition to his comments on the Persian Gulf, I was very pleased and encouraged to hear us talk about an alternate energy policy, talk about health care, talk about the war against drugs, talk about enhancing education. But frankly, now I think it's time to turn the rhetoric into results. So I look forward to working with him to make sure that we focus on the domestic crisis. We have real problems in this country. There's no question that we are in a recession. I remember talking to Alan Greenspan in a meeting several months ago, and he said, well, either we're in a healthy retrenchment or we're in a recession. And if we're going to be competitive, if we're going to face the competition of EC 92, we've got to deal with our economy. So let's just hope that this war is over quickly and we can focus on our domestic problems.
Did you hear Greenspan's remark today that if
Yes.
the war goes beyond April, then we're going into a very, very deep recession?
And I'm very concerned about that. And although I understand the total consumption of the president, total involvement in the war, I think it's critical that if he's not focusing on it, someone is looking at our domestic policy.
I think you're right. Aside from being a celebrity moderator, I'm on the New York State Banking Board, and I see a lot of tragedy going on there in the banking system.
Well, let me just say that I think one thing that is optimistic, the problem with the S&Ls and the reason that it got to the point we're in now with over a $500 billion bailout is that it was swept under the rug. At least Bill Seidman, in my view, is facing the problem and trying to propose solutions. So at least we won't have the problem, we hope, with the commercial banks that we are currently having with the S&Ls.
Although if you read the data and you see it doesn't look good for the future. The reserves are going, and it's just, I'm afraid it's going to be the stage 2 of what we've seen.
But at least the first step is facing the problem.
Right.
What was
All right,
happening.
we're going to wrap it up. I want a prophecy from both of you. A, how long the war is going to last, and B, where is Israel going to stand a year from now? We'll start with the ladies first.
Well, I would like to hope that it's over soon, but I have great fear that I don't even want to predict time. Let me just say that I want to devote my energies after this war is over to making sure that the close relationships that have been established currently are maintained, and I want to do as much as I can in the Congress to ensure that Israel gets all the support it needs, that it gets help to settle the Soviet refugees, that it gets help to build up its military capacity, because as we well know, there are going to be a lot of problems after the war is over, and in order to keep Israel secure and free and a democracy, we have to be there right by their side.
Amen. Eliot?
Well, I would guess that the war would be over by May or June. I heard Zbigniew Brzezinski say he thought in 7 or 8 weeks. I
heard Henry Kissinger say in 2 weeks, so that's shows a lot.
I'm not quite so optimistic. I hope they're right and I'm wrong. But I do think that when the war ends, whenever it does end, there will be a number of problems down the horizon vis-a-vis the Middle East. As we said before, the Palestinian question, the settling of the Soviet Jewish immigrants. These are things, and those of us that are friends of Israel in Congress and out of Congress really have to lay the groundwork now to make sure that the close working relationship that the United States has always had with Israel is strengthened, I was just appointed or selected the subcommittee on Europe and the Middle East in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and so I'm going to be punching on that committee.
Great.
Because I think it's very, very important that we understand that Israel is the best ally the United States has, not only in the Middle East, but in the world. And I always say that we can look at the votes of the United Nations during the past 30 years. Israel has voted with the United States more so, higher percentage than any other nation on earth, and I think that's significant. So the relationship is a two-way street.
Great. Thank you very much for coming, Nita.
Nice
Elliot,
to be with
Thank you.
Thank you. We're
Thank
going to
you.
Israel, and we'll send everybody.
Actually, we're supposed to go with a group of Jewish parliamentarians. It was supposed to be in late February. I'm not sure,
Right.
but we hope to be going there soon with other members of Congress.
Take a few Irish people with you.
Why
All right,
not?
we'll be back after commercial break. We thank the Congress people for taking time out from a busy schedule to come down and enlighten us. Thanks.
Yeah.
Really, thanks a
Now
lot.
I can go on my
Good,
nose.
thanks.
Got to come on again, Nita.
A pleasure.
We're back. I'm Leon Charney here with a very, very interesting guest, a man who's fighting for Israel every minute of his life, fighting to bring Jews and Christians together. You would think he's a rabbi, but he's not. He's not even Jewish. His name is Ed McAteer, and he's a Christian. He's head of the Christian Roundtable. Was that
The
be correct?
Religious Roundtable.
The Religious Roundtable. Ed, why so much Israel Jews? What is it?
Well, I tell people, and answer that question many times, Leon, that my operations manual, the Bible, tells me the place that Israel...
It's a best-selling book, isn't it?
Best-selling book, right, worldwide, year after year. And it has a lot to say about God's love for Israel and how that the faith that I'm deeply into, the Christian faith, derives its roots from the Jewish religion.
How many times have you been to Israel, Ed?
Oh my! A number of them. I can't remember quite often.
And you feel good? You feel at home there?
There, absolutely, I do, Leon.
I understand that you did a breakfast on Wednesday and you had 1,200 people there.
I did. I had Dan Quayle was to be our keynoter, but Bush sent him, I think, to Norway, or to England maybe. I think to the King's funeral. But we had the Democratic Senate represented by Senator Albert Gore, the Republican Senate by Don Nichols, and the new ambassador arriving in October from Israel, Zalman Shawwal, after listening to senators and congressmen and religious leaders and Christian businessmen, some good singing the Pledge of Allegiance. Then he responded to what he had heard, and his pretty little wife was sitting with tears on her cheeks due to the impression that she drew from that breakfast. That was our 10th one in a row, I might say.
Is this a full-time occupation, or is it a hobby?
You mean the breakfasts?
No, the Religious Roundtable.
Oh, yes. I spent over 25 years, Leon, selling the world's finest toothpaste, Colgate Dental Cream. Cleans your breath while it cleans your teeth.
Wait a minute. I don't think they're a sponsor. We'll have to blurt that. Go ahead.
And my last position was from Southern Sales Marketing Manager, and I left Colgate. I resigned short of retirement 15 years ago to take over as the National Director of the Freedom Foundation, and then later as the National Field Director of the Conservative Caucus. And then in 1979, I called together 126 national leaders from the business, political, military, and religious community and established in Washington the Religious Roundtable. So it's full-time, to answer your question, after telling you all
Now,
that.
what is the agenda of the Roundtable? What do you do exactly?
Well, the focus of the Roundtable is public policy on moral issues. And we, in moral issues, perceive, and I think correctly, more than that which is usually thought to be perceived by what Christians think moral issues are, that is, prayer in school and pornography and so forth. Foreign policy is a moral issue. Robbing people of their hard-earned money by Congress or anyone else is a moral issue. So the focus of the Roundtable is public policy on moral issues. And we feel that the average American is a common-sense person. So what we do through our foundation, and have done successfully, is gather people together. For instance, I put on the meeting in 1980 in Dallas, Texas, where there were 5,500 ministers, 20,000 people, 200 of your colleagues from the news, ABC, CBS, the London BBC, Scandinavian Broadcasting, and our keynote speaker was one Ronald Reagan.
I remember him. He was President of the United States.
He was President of the United States, and Ed Meese told me later at the White House, in his opinion, that that meeting brought together the conservative religious support in America behind Reagan. So we put these meetings on for the purpose of educating people and giving direction to them, because we believe that the average American, given the right information, will make the right decision. I believe that about Israel. I know that the average Bible-believing Christian, which there are millions of them in America, are pro-Israel. I know that.
All right, we got 1 minute for this segment, and then we're going to use you for another segment. But tell me, you're a man of religious conviction, and you have the Bible behind you and all these books. I want you to give me a scenario, like I asked the Congress people before. What is going to happen? How's the war going to work out? What's going to happen in Israel? And you got 45 seconds to do it.
I believe, as they expressed, obviously they have a vast military power. I helped furnish the air support for General MacArthur when he went in the Philippines. I was one of the carriers that was sunk there. I have a little grasp of what will happen military, and not an expert. I believe Saddam, because of the overpowering military array against him, obviously he'll fall. However, that does not end the problem, and this is my concern as it concerns our friend and ally, Israel. They will bear, maybe, the onus of war guilt, and so this is one of the reasons that I'm delighted to be on your show. Had that breakfast yesterday to try to condition people for that.
Ed, I can't tell you what this has meant to me. I got to say goodbye now. I'll probably convert to I'm not sure what, but I hope you come back with us again. We'll be back after commercial break with Adi Gelber. We're talking with Adi Gelber, who is president of Islam Tours, and about a month and a half ago, we did a show with Adi Gelber and a Rafi and Hamdi show, which was Rafi Farber of the Israeli Tourism Agency and Hamdi, I forgot his last name, who's head of Egyptian tourism, and Adi Gelber, who came up with a fantastic idea, and I'm going to let him explain it.
Well, the show which we did with you a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't aware of the large audience, which really...
That's your mistake.
That's my mistake.
Am I responsible to teach you everything?
I was overwhelmed by the number of calls from people who called in, and I heard it also from my friend Hamdi and also from Rafi, who watched the show. And I would like to extend to your audience a free trip to Israel, to be in Israel at the time of Israel's Independence Day, which simply by writing into your show, we'll have a drawing with Rafi Farber, who is a Commissioner of Tourism to Israel, who will draw the winner.
Capable of drawing.
And capable of drawing. It's a trip which has a value about close to $2,200-$2,400, which has a flight, hotels, some sightseeing, some dinners, some meeting with personalities in Israel, simply to start the ball moving and have your audience
Adi,
participate.
so what are you offering now? You're saying that you'll give them a round trip?
Well, it's an Islam World Travel Contest to the audience of the Leon Charney Report viewers. This is a prize for one individual which wishes to go to Israel. We have the Israel Overture Tour celebrating Israel's independence for 11 days. We picked the date of departure to be April 11, which is over Independence Day in Israel, so they'll be part of the celebration, hopefully much more peaceful times. The tour includes a round-trip air transportation from New York to Tel Aviv on El Al, or from any other gateway of El Al in the United States, a deluxe hotel in Tel Aviv, Haifa, Tiberias, and Jerusalem, breakfast daily, 2 lunches, 2 dinners, 6 days of sightseeing, round-trip transfers, the meeting with various personalities in Israel at their choice. Once they write in, and we have all their postcards, the winner will be announced on the Leon Charney Report on March 3, 1991, to give them enough, ample time to pack their suitcases and go.
That's very nice. And what we will do is, once we pick a winner, we will invite the winner to come on the show before the trip and tell us how excited they are about going on the trip, and then ask them to come back later and tell us how the trip went. I think it's a wonderful gesture by Islam Tours, and I suspect I will be inundated with people who want to travel to Israel. Adi, are there any restrictions here whatsoever?
Only restriction is you got to be 18 and over.
So anybody writing in must show or prove that they're 18 or over. If you have gray hair, we're not going to test you. If you look a little youngish and you're good looking, my producer will personally screen you and make sure that everything is in order.
Please write a postcard to the Leon Charney Report, 1501 Broadway, New York, New York, 10036.
All right, Adi, we've now given someone a trip to Israel, but Hamdi came on the show and he said that he wanted people to visit Egypt. We got something for them?
Well, Leon, I've known you for many years, and I was afraid you were the type of a guy, you give him a finger, you like a hand, but how can I refuse you? I've never did it before.
It's not for me, it's for my audience. It may be your sister who writes in and wins the tour. I don't know who's going to win.
Well, I don't have a sister, so you don't have that problem.
I'm not sure you don't have a sister. Knowing you could have anything.
Since we are very much also involved in Egypt with tourism, and in respect to Hamdi, and the Egyptians also have touristic problems those days, I'm glad also to offer a trip to Egypt. We will raffle off a legendary Nile tour of ours, which is a tour for 10 days from May, sometimes in May, which is
after Ramadan.
Good season, after Ramadan, anywhere from May until September at the time of their choice. The tour will include, in this instance, round-trip transportation from New York to Cairo, deluxe hotels in Cairo, the deluxe Nile cruise ship, which I'm sure you have been on one and you know what a wonderful experience it is to be on the Nile. All meals on the Nile cruise, breakfast daily in Cairo, and lunches, sightseeing, and flights within Egypt. The winner will be announced also on your show on April 7. We'll draw his name, and again it applies the same condition, one individual 18 and over, and this time a person.
Our audience is indebted to Isram Tours and you, Adi, and I'm sure that we'll be inundated with thousands of postcards, and maybe being the person that I am, and you know me, maybe we'll get 2 trips out of you.
The more the merrier, but my ultimate goal is, Leon, to have you once lead a tour to Israel for the audience of the Leon Charney Report. It will be an experience from them, a twofold experience.
But we need a fleet for our audience. You know, we have millions of people watch us every week.
That's our part. We have to take care of this part.
Okay, you take care of logistics, and I will lead it and sing a song from my old days as a cantor.
Thank you.
The preceding program was paid for by CCN Broadcasting Limited. It comes to you from WNYC's Lease Time Service, a distinct component of WNYC-TV.